What's going on, guys? So when it comes to design, I think that a lot of developers have issues creating nice layouts and adding certain effects to their layouts to make them look good. So I have this design resources for developers repo that I created a couple years ago. There's 37,000 stars. There's new resources getting added every day, from templates to icons to stock photos, all kinds of resources. So you might want to check that out. And then I just created this SVG CSS generator repository with basically 10 different, I guess, mini projects, and each one uses a specific online generator for some kind of effect. So for example, we have SVG Waves, SVG Blobs, Glassmorphism, CSS effects, and things like that. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through and look at the generators and not only show you the generator, but show you how to use it and implement it in these little mini projects. And you can see I have the live demo. So this is for the waves. We have the generator link down here, and then a menu where you can kind of skip around. This is for the blobs, SVG background, Glassmorphism, and so on. And I got this idea from a tweet from Savio Martin, who's someone I follow on Twitter. He's actually a 15-year-old kid, 15-year-old web developer. And he created this thread with all these different generators, which kind of gave me this idea. So I wanted to give him a shout out. So what I have here on my local host is all of those projects, but as you can see, without the wave, without the blob, without any of the effects. So we're going to go through and add those. All right. Now, if you do want to follow along in the repository, there's a starter files folder, and this here is exactly what I have in VS Code right now, if you do want to follow along. All right, so we'll start off with the waves, and let's click on the generator down here. So it's getwaves.io, and basically you have these waves. You can change the shape if you want like a square or jagged effect, which I don't really like, so we're going to stick with the smooth wave. And I want it on the top because I want it to be up here. So we can click on the arrow to put that up at the top. And then for the shape, if you increase this, it'll make more waves, which I don't want. I just want it very simple. So this right here, you can also kind of change up the shape a little bit. So I think something like, let's see, I want enough room for the image. So probably something like that we could do. And then for the color, I want it to be the same purple as this heading in this image. And by the way, these images of these characters, this is from a website called Undraw, which is actually a resource in the first repository that I showed you. But I want that color, so I'll use my Google Chrome color picker extension. So let's say pick color from page. We'll click on that, so that copies the hex value, and then we'll just go ahead and paste that in. And then to get it, you just click this button here. You can either download the SVG or you can just copy the SVG code, which is what I'm going to do. And then in the HTML, which is very simple, it's just the text, so a div with some text, and then the image. I'm going to put the wave right here, so it's the generated SVG. So we'll go ahead and add that and save it. And it does come down a little too far, almost hit, and if you resize this, you might have some issues as well. So let's actually change it a little bit. So yeah, something like that. So all you have to do, copy the SVG, place this, and check it out. And there we go. So yeah, I think that looks pretty good. All right, so next we have SVG Blobs, which will go to the generator. So this is blobmaker.app. And you've probably seen this kind of style before. A lot of times people have like an image kind of coming off of it or text inside of it, whatever you want to do. And you can change the shapes with these two sliders. So we'll do something like that. And you can also use this button here to change the shape. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. And then the color, there's some predefined colors. I'm going to choose the purple. And then you can click this one to download the SVG. You can click this one just to get the code. And I believe the waves and the blob, they're both by Creative Labs, I believe. So let's grab that, and then we'll go into the blobs index.html, which is again just some text, and the CSS, which is very simple. So we'll go ahead and paste this right here. That's the blob SVG. And then let's go to this page. Now it is really large, so what we can do is in the CSS, we can target it. We'll just target the SVG, and let's say width, and we'll set it to 600 pixels. And there we go. And of course, you could add more blobs if you want. This is just to kind of show you how to use it. This isn't supposed to look that great. So the next thing we're going to look at is SVG Backgrounds. So I have a card here with an image, and the generator is at svgbackgrounds.com. And basically we can click on this here, and I really like how these look. They remind me of like an iPad background or something, really high quality. So we're just going to grab this one right here, and you can change the color, you can change the opacity, the radial values, you can change those as well. So once you figure out what you want, you just click export, and you have some options here. One is to just get all of the CSS, which is what we're going to do. You can also get the inline SVG. Illustrator, I'm not sure what that is. I think that must be the Illustrator file. And then you can also download the SVG. So I'm going to click CSS, which will copy it. And then let's go into the SVG background folder and into style CSS. And we're going to put this as the body. So we'll just paste that in. So it's just using the SVG as the background URL and then adding some other background stuff here. So we can now check that out. And now we have this cool background. So you can experiment with it. There's a lot of good ones. And then for a Glassmorphism, I have just my Traversy Media, my logo with a black background. I'm actually going to add an SVG background to this because the Glassmorphism effect, you can't really see it if it's just a solid background. It's nice if you have some kind of image to see through the glass. So we're going to use this one here. I'm going to just export CSS, and then we'll add that to, let's go to our Glassmorphism and then style CSS. Paste in the background stuff here, and if we look, now we have that background. Now as far as the Glassmorphism generator, that is this tool right here. And if you don't know what Glassmorphism is, I'm sure you've seen it. You've seen this effect. It's basically like frosted glass. So it's a transparent card or whatever you want to call it, and you can see through it, but the images behind it, it's like I said, like frosted glass. You can have this blur, which you can make hotter or no blur at all. So let's do like we'll do around here, and then transparency. That's just for the entire card, the transparency. So we'll do something like that, and you can choose to show the outline or not, and it just generates some CSS. And of course, you don't need a generator for this. You can just go ahead and type in the CSS, but it's nice to see what it would look like with less of a blur or more transparency. So we'll just go ahead and copy the CSS, and then we'll go into the Glassmorphism styles, and we want to add this right here. You see I have a class of glass, which is on that card, and I'm just going to paste in the generated CSS. And now you can see we have that effect. So we can see the background image, these lines, but they're just a little bit blurred. And of course, you could go back and change that if you want. Okay, so the next one is a fancy border radius. So right now I just have this white card on a gray background. So this generator, basically you just create a shape, and you can grab these squares and drag it along and just create the shape you want. And it'll just create, like it says, a fancy border radius. So if we want something like that, we can just copy this value. And let's close this other stuff up. So we'll copy that value, and we'll go into border radius, style CSS. And on the card here, I have a border radius of 10 pixels right now, but I'm going to go ahead and add that value, so these percentages. And now you can see we got this cool shape. And we can even go back to our SVG backgrounds, and let's grab this one here, export the CSS. I really like these backgrounds. And then we'll put it on the body, save that, and there we go. All right, so that is a fancy border radius. Next one is Neomorphism. So this here, let's go to the generator. Neomorphism, I didn't even know what that was, honestly, until I saw that Twitter post. I guess it's like the background. It's supposed to look like the background or the foreground is coming off of the background. So basically the foreground and the background are like the same color. It just looks like it's kind of coming off. So here you can change things like the size, the color, you can change the angle. So it's basically how you have the shadow and then you have like this brighter outline. Here you can change the shape, the blur value. Yeah, so it's like coming off. So we'll just go with that, and then we'll copy this and we'll add it to this here. So let's go to Neomorphism and style CSS, and I have a class of Neo. So we'll add it here. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so I mean it's just kind of coming off of the background. And I believe the background should be the same color as the foreground should be the same as the background. So the body here, we should probably, oh, it's already the same color. Yeah, so I mean, nothing special. I don't think it's that great, but if you want that effect, this is a good generator for that. So next we have just a CSS shadow. So we have a simple card here with no shadow. And then if we go to this generator, which is at shadows.brum.af, and you might be saying, I don't need a generator to create a box shadow, but shadows can be kind of complicated for beginners because there's just so many different values, especially if you're having multiple layers like this. You know, a single layer is easy, but then you have these multiple layers, and it's nice to just see the effect, and you can see the result before you actually add the CSS. So you can change your final transparency. You have the different layers here. So we have 4 layers of shadows. We can actually drag this over and kind of change that up. Horizontal distance, vertical distance, the final blur strength. So any possible shadow that you want, you can create here, and you can just kind of see what it's going to look like. And then when you're happy with it, just grab the box shadow. And let's go to, where is it? Shadow, CSS. And I have a shadow class. We'll just add that, and then let's take a look. Now we have that exact shadow. All right, and then the next one is, let's see, a CSS Grid. So here I just have a bunch of cards just on top of each other. But if we go to the generator for this, and this really, you're not going to need this for long. If you don't know anything about CSS Grid, that's where I think this can come in handy, but otherwise you're going to type this out. It's not, there's no need for it if you know just the basics of the grid. So basically you can just specify your columns and rows. You can kind of, see what it looks like. So let's say we want 3 columns, and this is the width of the columns, with which 1 FR means that they're all equal, 1 fraction each. You could also do percentages, I believe. Yep, so you can do percentages. I think you can do pixels. Let's try that. Yep, you can do that as well. But we'll stick to just 3 even columns. And then rows, let's say we want 3. And then the gap is going to be the space in between. Column gap is your vertical space. And I just did a CSS crash course as well. You might want to check that out if you do need this. And then the row gap, which is the horizontal space. And then we can click on this, can I have my code? And we can just let's grab that. And then for this project here, that's going to be the grid project. Let's go to the CSS, and we want to add that onto the container. So right here, we'll save that. And now you can see we have a grid with 3 even columns. Now, again, this is pretty easy. You don't really need a generator for it, but for people that are just getting started, may not know these different properties and how to use them, that could come in handy. And I'd probably just use gap here. Instead of doing both of these, column and row, you just do gap, and that would do the same thing. All right, so that's the grid, and then we have a pattern background. So basically, this generator, heropatterns.com, allows you to have these different patterns. Basically, they're seamless SVGs that repeat and give you kind of a textured look. So you can change the opacity here. You can change, obviously, you know, the background color. You can change the foreground color. I'm just going to use the default, so I'm going to reload. And I want to use, let's see, a lot of these are really ugly looking. The one I wanted was, I think, called Temple. Where is it? Right here. So this here, and you can make it lighter or more visible. We'll do something like that, and then we'll just go ahead and grab this code. You can also download the unstyled SVG. And then let's go to pattern, and we want to put this on the body. All right, so now if we check it out, now you can see we have this repeating pattern. All right, and then the last one is just a gradient. So again, I have this plain black background and gradient generator, nothing special. I don't really use gradients much, but if you do want to use them and you don't know how to just do it right through straight CSS, you can. And again, it's good just to be able to experiment with what this stuff will look like. And of course, you can change the colors, you can change the angle, linear, radial, etc. And then when you're ready, you can just grab the code here, copy that to the clipboard, and let's go to our gradient CSS and go to the body here and just paste that in. And now we have a website from 2011. So obviously all of these aren't going to be useful, but I think like the beginning, the waves, the blobs, that stuff I think is pretty trendy right now and can be difficult to create without these generators. So I think that they can be helpful, especially to, like I said, freelancers and projects where you're creating everything. You're creating the design, you're doing the HTML, CSS, the back end, everything. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this and found at least some of it useful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.